So, hello everybody. Nice to see you here to join us in discussion about what we believe are very important events going on in Serbia, student and civic protests. My name is Marija Mandić. I will be moderator. I'm a research fellow at the Institute of Philosophy and Social Science in University of Belgrade, and also co-director of the Balkan Course at IUFU. Together with me, the panelists of this panel are going to be Bojana Vuletić, activist, and she graduated University of Belgrade, Faculty of Political Sciences. Then Jana Trajković, who is at the just finished secondary school actually, and will enroll university, but very active in protests like Bojana, and also PhD candidate Katarina Beširević at the University of Belgrade, Faculty of Philosophy, very active in protests. So we have three insiders with us, and we have one our colleague from neighborhood. Professor of history Vjeran Pavlaković from the University of Rijeka. And together we will try to reflect on protests, mainly from the inside, giving inside perspective, but also trying to reflect from outside, how it may appear to the others. And without further ado, I will start because there is so much to say. Protests have been going on for like 8 months. So I will just give a brief chronology. Many of you might know, but some maybe not, that it started when the canopy at the main railway station in Novi Sad collapsed, and it killed 16 people. And then the problem with that canopy was that it was not, as we believe, citizens of Serbia in majority believe, and students, it was not just accident, because it was a newly renovated railway station, which was renovated at an extremely high cost. After that, the citizens began to give silent vigils for victims killed in this incident. And they would just stood silently for 15-16 minutes at 52 past 11, I think, because this was the moment when the tragedy occurred. But then the students of the Faculty of Dramatic Arts were also doing that, and then they were attacked. Not only them, but they were among groups who were attacked by anonymous people, which were later recognized as activists of the ruling party. When they were attacked while giving these silent vigils, first, students of Faculty of Dramatic Arts blocked universities, and then they were joined by other faculties. So, and it was rapidly like chain reaction. The students blocked classes, blocked universities, and then they tried to put their demands, they publicly demanded that responsible should be that the government should put effort to find who is responsible for the tragedy, and to then prosecute those. Then we have these demands. You can read these demands. So demanded that these are famous 4 demands put by students. And these demands were to publish this documentation on reconstruction, then to drop charges against arrested and detained students, and on the other side to prosecute those who attack students, and also something regarding budget allocation for faculties. Since these demands were not met, students didn't stop blocking universities, and they initiated many actions. Among them, marches through Serbia, all over Serbia, villages, towns, trying to raise awareness about what happened and about the general situation in the country, and also riding bikes to Strasbourg as the seat of Council of Europe, then ultra marathon to Brussels as the seat of the EU administration, and by now the protests, and they organized also big rallies. The two biggest were in Belgrade on 15th of March and 28th of June. And then the protest spread to 400 cities and towns across Serbia. So I will begin this panel with Bojana Vuletić, who is an active and activist journal Machina, and also who follows closely and participates in students' protests. And maybe Bojana, you would like to tell us something about more chronological development and pressures under which academic community was put.
Hello. Yes. Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you. Thank you for showing up and for your interest in this topic. So, Marija gave us a general chronology of the events in Serbia, but I would like to point out the specific part about the academic community and the pressures that the academic community, both students but also professors and all working in the universities that they were enduring. So this presentation and my answer is based on the article by Andrijana Zaharijević from Institute for Philosophy and Social Theory and our own Jana Trajković. Yeah, we will have also some pictures, but the chronology, of course, began with what Marija mentioned, the silent vigil of the students of Faculty of Dramatic Arts and the violence that occurred during this vigil. Afterwards, very, very soon, when these students started blocking, it took it took less than a month for almost all public faculties of the universities in Serbia to give their public support, and most of them to even blockade their own faculties. And by the end of the December, we had unanimous support from the educational institutions in Serbia all over the country. And that is when the answer from the institutions came, when the Ministry of Education abruptly shortened the first school semester in order to prevent the teachers who were, even previous to the canopy fall, they were on strike. And this is very important to mention because the fall of the canopy happened on Friday, and this in the time when students were going to their schools. So the strike of the teachers very much contributed to the lesser number of victims, so to say. And we believe that everything was very, very interconnected. But to come back to the end of the year and ministry's executive order, so the first semester of the schools was shortened, and they even said that teachers do not have to give grades, just finish it, just go from schools, go back to your homes in order not to gather, not to assembly, not to strategize in this sense. So when we move further on January and February, the most important things that we should definitely mention is that suddenly after the faculties, we started seeing strikes and blockades in high schools. Even in some elementary schools, the teachers were doing the strikes, and a total 70 to 80% of the schools in Serbia had some form of work stoppage. Of course, the whole support for the students became wider between medical, agricultural workers, bar association of engineers, and so on and so on. So a lot of different social groups joined the protest, joined the support for students, but still the whole work and the whole pressure was mostly in the academic community. And in the January, we can see that the rector of the Belgrade University addressed the Parliamentary Committee for Education and Science and publicly stated that the whole university supports the students, which was, a very clear and very in their face message, so to say. And this strike complete division between the government and the educational system, and sort of a clash between them. The academic community started organizing in various ways. A lot of different platforms and associations started to turn up and to give different kind of support to the students. Then we came to the financial pressure, and I would say blackmail to the teachers and professors. So the government implemented a reduction of the salaries for teachers, reducing their salaries. And they would say not reducing, but paying them for what they work. So the government was basically saying you don't have a right to strike, and since you're striking, you're not working, and since you're not working, you will not be paid. So we had cases where teachers were paid 20 euros per month due to the fact that they were on strike, and these salaries were very they were reduced, but they were calculated in not a really transparent way and systemic way, so to say. So this financial pressure was another layer of the pressure that the academic community was enduring. I will quickly go a bit on. I can see you, Marija. I will soon be done. And the point is that the president was also very vocal about the fact that the government will stop paying the professors. We will give them potatoes, as he said, which means nothing. And the Ministry of Education issued a regulation that reduced professor salaries to 12.5% of what they earned before. And this was something that is still an issue, and that was one of the reasons why academic community blocked the crossroads in Belgrade for a very long time, demanding that this regulation is put out of order. But we are still fighting this issue, unfortunately. Right now, what we have as another additional layer is the attacks and arrests of the professors and students and deans, and even physical attacks happening on the street every day. So we are fighting like from a previous weekend. We are having people blocking the streets each day. The police is coming, arresting everybody, charging them for various criminal acts that they did not commit. So this is another level and another layer of pressure that was put on these people who are just trying to say that transparency should be brought back to the Serbian institutions. And I would stop here. So with additional comments in the other part. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bojana. because you frame it like in a broader context, showing that not only students but whole academic community is under pressure, and professors. And I would now move to Katarina Beširević, who is also insider of the protest, who is one of coordinators, who is sleeping at the faculty, and I saw her often on the streets, being in charge for order. But what I would like to ask you, Katarina, is about this famous or infamous, as far as the regime is concerned, organization of the protest. There are no leaders. And it is very interesting that these protests do not have leaders, and that they have kind of horizontal organizations through plenums, and that they have achieved to a kind of direct democracy. And they also, I heard that you're organized into sections. So please, can you tell us something about how it came to you as a model, and how do you organize yourselves? How do you come up with decisions like that we can say, oh, the students say that, like whole general population is behind something?
Thank you, Marija, and thank you, Bojana, for these two introductions. Just to make things more clearer, maybe, I'm not a coordinator. I'm a PhD candidate, so I'm a student as well. And at first, because I'm also employed as a researcher at the faculty, I was kind of divided as to whether I should join the protests with the professors, which I did at the very beginning, then kind of shifted my focus with my colleagues to helping the students. So it's kind of, we're somewhere in between. But how this all functions is that I am a student. I have a student ID card, so I can take part in these plenary sessions or plenums that are in the core of the movement itself. I will try to explain this as short as possible, and you're welcome to pose any questions. The photographs that you see, you've seen them yesterday as well, but I think that they're the best visual thing to go in the background and to follow actually what I'm going to talk about. So it is not a secret that Serbia is kind of an authoritarian state at this point, or a hybrid democratic regime, however we want to label it. But what is quite fascinating is that in this time, the students have begun to build this completely parallel system that is based on direct democracy when it comes to decision making. So this is not the first time, obviously, and it's not just a Serbian thing. This is something that we've seen in other countries, something that we've seen in other blockades of the faculties in Serbia before. But this is the largest scale ever. So each faculty has its own plenums, that we call it in Serbian, or plenary sessions. So this means that each student of the faculty with their ID cards from that faculty can take part in the plenary sessions, can vote, and can make decisions. They have 2 or 3 moderators. It depends on the faculty. I'm going to give you examples from the Faculty of Philosophy because I'm familiar with that one and how it functions. So we have 3 moderators each time, which rotate on the basis of vote and direct democracy again. So there's no one person who moderates the session, but each time there's another person doing this. The students on these plenary sessions make the decisions. They vote. They discuss things. So from everyday life at the faculty to their political engagements in the larger scale of the entire state, to organizing protests, etc. So it's quite important, and it's quite interesting to mention that the plenary sessions at the Faculty of Philosophy last at least 3 hours. In other places, they're quite shorter, but the Faculty of Philosophy, I think, breaks records in every sense of that. So that's one part of it. But for it to be, yes, and also each faculty sends their delegates to this high council of delegates, where they make common decisions. So where they step out as students in the blockade. Also, some faculties can do actions by themselves and can organize actions and their internal organizations by themselves. But when it comes to this collective thing that Marija was talking about, and when we talk about the students as the whole, they send their delegates to this higher council. Within faculties or colleges, they have their working groups where they make specific decisions. So working groups for security, which is the people in the yellow vests that you can see on the photos that are securing the protests. You have working groups for logistics, for media, for communication within institutions, etc. And each faculty has their own specific working groups. For example, the Faculty of Philosophy has a department of psychology. So it also has a working group for psychological support. And they don't just do it for the students at the Faculty of Philosophy, but for the students in general and high school students and professors, etc. So a lot of people they're helping everyone. But what is the most important thing, and I will finish with this, is this concept of this faceless movement. So the students have been learning from the protests and from the mistakes of the protests in the past. And they made their movement faceless as much as they can, and leaderless. So there was a speech by the student from the Faculty of Philosophy at the very beginning, at the 1st or 2nd of December, where she said, "You will see our faces, but this face, my face in particular, you won't be seeing anymore." So they're changing. They're changing the way the persons that are representing them in the media. And there's not one person that you can address, but they're acting as a collective. Also, there's this specific thing that the students at the Faculty of Philosophy do, is that when they're doing when they're on the media or giving statements in the newspapers, in the magazines, they don't come out with their names and surnames. They just come out as students of the Faculty of Philosophy. So this is the way that they are trying to remain faceless. And I will come back to this in the second part. Why is it important? Because of this narrative that we talked about yesterday as well, the regime labeling them as foreign agents, etc., and the way that the regime targeted the opposition leaders and the activists in the past and is still doing today. So this is their way to avoid this. And up until now, they've been quite successful. So I will stop here and then we can move on.
Thank you very much. I think it's now clear how you're organized. And now I will ask Jana Trajković, our youngest participant, who has just finished secondary school. To me, it was at the beginning surprised that actually secondary schools also joined, and it was debate whether they are children or not, because should they join? Is this politicization of children or not? But still, they mostly the students of the 4th grade and the 3rd grade joined gymnasiums. So how it looked to you? Why it was so important for you to join student protests, to blockade your high schools, and how it looks from your point of view, these protests?
Well, hi everyone. For the first, I would like to say that for as long as I can remember, I have lived in a country that is full of corruption, and no opposition party and no organization has ever managed to achieve what the students have achieved. They awakened the people, and they brought up millions of citizens on the street. And we, as a high school students, looked up to them, really. And we were inspired by their courage and their determination to fight for the better future. And, many people saw us as a mobile phone generation, that we were distracted and disconnected, and yet we were more interested in the social media than in real life. And we could have really stayed silent, quietly watching and scrolling. But we knew better. We knew that the silence isn't a choice. And then when the things are happening on the street that are happening now, if we don't participate, we felt like we were throwing away our future. And we entered the blockades shortly after the universities. And I think it was the first gymnasium in Kragujevac. And almost every high school, every gymnasium in Serbia entered the blockades 1 week after. And we joined this movement knowing that we were taking a really big risk. We risked, of course, as students missing classes. But the thing is that really raised the chance of not graduating high school and not getting into the university. but we still decided to do it because we thought that what is the point of having a diploma if we have to earn it by looking away from the real problem that is happening in our society. And we know that the pressure was really high from our principals of the school because no one supported us. For example, teacher did, but the principals not, and that was the biggest problem because we were facing fear and warning and even threats because the police could have entered the high school building anytime because we don't have the autonomy like the universities because the police can't enter the universities but can high school by the law. And also there was a really personal like pressure for some students because the parents were really worried about us, about that we're going to lose everything we worked for our whole life. But the thing is that we didn't protest for fun. We protested because we really had a political awareness and civil responsibility, because we knew that the political awareness isn't a thing that you get handed when you turn like 18. It's something that you live with every day through your choices, your voice, and your courage. And we didn't just support the students; we fully joined them. And I think that is something that people should not forget when they talk about this moment. And I think the most important thing we did as a high school students is we helped education sector itself get into the strike, because for years teachers have been striking with little or even no success, and they were always ignored. And when we stepped into the blockade, something changed. They found like motivation to follow in the full solidarity. And I think it's shameful that the only professional groups, it was only educators who truly stood with students, not just in streets, but in the strike. And they were ready to face really big consequences. And they were only one who dared to go into complete like work stoppage. And some of them went with a month without pay. They were getting like $30 per month for their salary, which is nothing. And they risked being fired, and they still stood there with us, because those are the people who have their families to feed, who were told to keep their heads down, but it's just like the courage, and we deserve to thank them for that a lot. And we were organized just like the university students. We had the plenums and the working groups, and we established strong communication with high schoolers across the whole Serbia, and we built incredible partnership with the student movement. And when the students arrived, we organized a few protests by ourselves. For example, when the students announced a general strike in January and March, we organized a protest where there was like 10,000 of people. And beyond that, we held multiple protests in front of the Ministry of Education, especially at the time when the ministry was pretending like nothing is happening, even though it did. And we stood by the side with the students at every moment, at every protest, every time on the street. For example, we were always happy to help them when the national television was blockaded for like 2 weeks. We were always ready to help them when they were tired and everything. And to be honest, if you ask many high school students who were involved in this protest, they will tell you that during the time of the blockade, they gained like more real life experience and more knowledge and more connections and even more like useful skills than the most traditional schooling ever gave them. And we're really proud of ourselves how we did it. And we got a lot of the knowledge while doing something that is really great for the community, country, and our children and the future generations that are like there to come after us.
Oh, thank you so much. So the Generation Z actually started protests. Generation X supported these are parents, and you belong to Generation Alpha, or Jana? Z, still Z, okay. But it is amazing. It is amazing, really, how you joined, and actually how you were like dismissed as a generation. All this generation was dismissed because they were like looked at as as being not interested in politics, as only looking at social media, as being asocial. but still something happened that you really surprised us and students and high school students, how you are much more aware of the political context than maybe older than you are. So congratulations on that. And we moved to Vjeran Pavlaković, a professor from the University of Rijeka, who is expert in many things, but some of them are being memory scapes, memory politics, and transitional justice, and who has extensively published on these topics and a well-known scholar. But first of all, coming from Croatia for this protest has its significance, since the students were accused that they are under the influence of Croatian, secret agencies standing behind this project. That actually this model of organizing was influenced by Croatian leftists or students, and that our Ana Brnabić, who is now president of National Assembly, showed a book called Blokarna kuharica, the blockade cook, demonstrating how students actually are following Croatian instructions to destroy Serbia. So, but on the other hand, students, when they rode bicycles to Strasbourg, on marathon, they went through Croatia, and they were greeted by many on their way through Croatia. So the first question is, can we say how these demonstrations are looked at in Croatian societies? Probably there are different views, but maybe you can tell us something about that. And the other question pertains to your expertise. Have you followed maybe this visual symbolics of the protests? What was striking or interesting for you? How it looks to you? We see the domination of Cyrillic script, for instance, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction and for inviting me here. And it's really an honor to be on this panel with these courageous activists and students here. So I'm not going to take too much time because I think really their voice needs to be heard. And as in the introduction, it's an unusual position to be both supporting what is going on, but also being careful just because of the accusations of the regime, as we have heard. And I was supposed to go in March 15th to give a lecture in Belgrade, and that was canceled because of Dan Day, or this D-Day. And so I actually haven't had a chance to be there amongst you and give the proper kind of support, although a lot of my friends are there, of course, and watching on the media and so on. And I'll call out Sven in a little bit because he's one of these subversive types. So I have a couple of themes. So one, you asked how does it look like from the Croatian perspective, and the first one is, of course, the official position. And if you look on vlada.hr or sabor.hr, the government and the parliament, there's actually very little that talks about what's going on in Serbia. There was some complaints about these Croatians that were expelled, some activists early on, but really there's not much being talked about, which is completely contrary to what the Serbian officials keep saying, Vučić and Ana Brnabić, as we've heard. Because really there's actually minimal sort of discussion about it. And this is actually probably in line with what the EU's policies are, which I'll talk about in the second section. So I would say more of silence than any kind of discussion. Number two is the media coverage. So these are from 4 mainstream media sources. We have Jutarnji list, Večernji list, Novi list in Rijeka, and then also Slobodna Dalmacija. And most of them, I mean, there is obviously coverage, but I wouldn't say there's any kind of joy or even egging on the overthrow. I think I would dare to use the Fox News, fair and balanced. I mean, there's obviously coverage of the size of the protest, and I think there's generally, I could say, a support for the student movement. And as we know, like Croatia and Serbia don't have great relationships, especially since Vučić has been in power. But I wouldn't say it's some kind of subversive or anti-Serbian content at all. I would say it's actually quite a bit of empathy and listening to the students and supporting it. That's my general sense. Maybe there's other colleagues here who would discuss it. And then I looked at some of the right-wing media portals, and there you do have maybe a bit more coverage that emphasizes, let's say, the radicalization or the maybe nationalist symbols that are present in some of the protests. But I can also talk about that a little bit later, because I don't think this is just an aspect of Serbian youth. I would say this is unfortunately something that's going on across the region in terms of the ghosts of the 1990s and maybe the ghosts of even the Second World War, and going back even farther. And it's something that I think that we were talking about in the program that we have for the potential new programs for the Balkan talks and the other elements, and also with which Vlado had organized in Amsterdam a few months ago, which we talked about general discussion of the former Yugoslavia 30 years later. But again, this is maybe something for another conversation. Now, looking at broadly Croatian society, which is also a very difficult topic to say, but I would argue, at least in my circles, you have also support and solidarity, especially from, let's say, the leftist or urban populations. I'm on a sabbatical this year, so I didn't get a chance to be with my students in Rijeka to discuss this with them, although I'm sure we would be, because I have a course on Southeast European studies. But they, in fact, many of my students from cultural studies were part of this organization, or this organizing these protests that you see here in Rijeka, where they are standing and supporting them. Again, it's always a very delicate situation because of the accusations we hear coming from Vučić and the Serbian government itself. So it's it's kind of like a tightrope. Yes, supporting, but to what extent does that happen? Now, we can also look at Serbian media. So I always try to follow this. We've got especially the tabloids, and we can see here not just Croatians, but the Ukrainians are also supporting this overthrow, and the use of and Kosovars. Yes, so yeah. And, the use of this term, the Ustasha, which is, of course, the Second World War. And as I said, there are problems in Croatian society, and there are radical right-wing forces, and there are the use of these symbols, but, it's obviously not an Ustasha state. And so here, I don't want to call out too much of Sven, but he also sent me some screenshots from Informer. I don't know if he wants to jump in at some point and tell me, but so when colleagues and scholars go and visit, they're very easily targeted by, I guess it was reporters or Secret Service or whoever was following you and as the alleged expert and analyst. So it is, as I said, a tightrope that we have to walk in order to give support. And finally, as was mentioned earlier, my latest project is looking at murals and mnemonic murals, some memory-making murals, but also political graffiti. And I'm sure there's a lot of this going on in Serbia. As I said, I haven't been there to do my own field work. I was there last year in May, so I saw the graffiti scape then, but I imagine it's been completely painted over and added to most recently. So maybe the colleagues and the fellow panelists can also comment on that. But I have been working on a paper with Orli Friedman, who has been very active in the protests, and she works on sort of memory activism, but also the memory of activism. And we saw one of the slides here was like Serbia je opet svijet or something like that, and this Belgrade, which was a sign, well, without the opet, without the again, was used in the 1990s, and then we see this legacy of protests going on. So I'm sure it's a very lively graffiti scape and all these symbols. As I said, I haven't been there in person, but I'm sure it allows a lot of creativity and protest. I mean, I think probably both sides use the walls, and I know like the regime certainly pays pro Ratko Mladić or other elements. So maybe I would leave it to the colleagues from the trenches to actually tell us about what this graffiti scape looks like. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vjeran. It was very interesting to hear. And we will have a second round of discussion, but with shorter reflection of our panelists, and then we will open the floor for you for questions. And also, I would like to ask Bojana maybe to comment one very interesting aspect of this protest. Vjeran mentioned this regional aspect in terms of Balkan or Southeast European regional significance of the protests, because when we heard yesterday that actually also people, citizens from Albania are following, and that there is kind of following what is going on in Serbia, but there is kind of a regional aspect in the context of Serbia. So students were going everywhere, to trying to visit almost every town, every village, because aware of this media blockades that exist in Serbia, or media lacking of media freedom. And this regional aspect concerning Serbia seems to be very important, especially we know that all universities joined, so we cannot say which university is more important in this protest, in Novi Sad, in Niš, in Belgrade, in Kragujevac, but in Novi Pazar. And most discussion went around also Novi Pazar, because it is the university where mostly students are of Muslim background, Bosniak ethnicity, which were so far not like part of any bigger social movement. They were always like kind of apart from this movement. And this is for the first time that they, together with students from Novi Pazar, joined other students. And this felt like something new. This felt cathartic, that they are together with in this, and that they found platform around which they can act together with students. So, how would you comment this regional aspect of the protests, and why do you mean it was so important to have these students from Novi Pazar together with you?
Thank you, Marija. In short, this is a response, this is in response and in contrast to what the government and the ruling elites are doing. But in a bit longer answer, why we had this regional activization from all the sides of Serbia. I believe that the first aspect is how centralized our political but also educational systems are. So we have 8 state universities in Serbia, 3 of which are in Belgrade. So you can see that even just by looking at this, we can see how unequal Belgrade and the rest of the Serbia, how we often say, are. And in this sense, I believe that this was a response to this centralization, both, as I said, political, but also educational. The only education that is given to the students, whether high school students or university students, in a decentralized manner, is non-formal education given by civil society organization, youth groups, informal activist groups, and stuff like this. So this was a sort of a foundation for this regionalized and decentralized rebellion setting, I would say. The second aspect was the immediate knowledge sharing need. So first we had, the first blockade happened definitely in Belgrade, but all the other faculties and high schools, as Jana mentioned, they wanted to follow, and they wanted to know how, we know something about plenary sessions, but we want to know how exactly are you doing this? How exactly, who moderates it? How we choose the moderator and everything. So they needed this immediate knowledge sharing through social media or mostly in-person contact, and that is how they connected together and share this knowledge. The third aspect that I would so both of these aspects are somehow internal, focused on the educational system. But the third aspect is completely external, and it connects to the support that they wanted, the students wanted to have from the wider public and the wider society. So they wanted to inform, first of all, the wider community, and they wanted to get support. So in a country where you don't have free media, where you don't have normal dissemination of information, instead you have what Vjeran mentioned, this propaganda media, of course, controlled by the government. You cannot just simply, inform everybody that the blockades are happening and why, in detail, why they are happening. You have to go and talk in person with the people who are different generation than you, different educational and economic background, and living in faraway places from these university centers. So why they did decentralize in geographical manner, and why students organize these long walks through Serbia is to get in touch with people who had no idea what was actually happening, who just saw these are Ustasha or however foreign agents who are trying to destroy this country, so they had no idea about the truth. And the last point about Sanjak, I am personally very, very emotionally connected to this region. I spent several years working there while working in civic society organization, and I met this region and these people, and always felt them as part of our wider community. Of course, no matter their religious or national or ethnicity. But the fact is that it's much different. The popular narrative or the mainstream narrative coming mostly from the political elites is completely different. So we had issues with each and every other region or other ethnicity in the previous couple of decades in Serbia. So we have to keep this fire of national hatreds and violence, always present in order to keep the whole society under constant fear that something bad can happen from the outsiders. So this region was always portrayed as an outsider, as somebody who people who are completely different than us, speaking different language, having different cultures and everything. But the fact is that this is a region of very young population. So their investment in the youth, the percentage of youth in general population is much bigger than in Serbia, and that is one of the reasons why it was very important to include them. And once they were included in the blockades, the new generations don't care about what Vučić used to say 30 years ago or what he's saying right now about the national hatred. They don't care. They just see people as people, and they want to communicate. They want to support each other, and they want to share knowledge and to fight together in order to change this society. And they accepted each other completely without any prejudices and without any internalization of this political narrative, and that is something that's so important, and it hasn't been seen in decades in Serbia. So thanks to you all for doing that.
Thank you, Bojana, and also to say that not only that you don't care, you care actually, but you were treating each other with respect. That is something new, and that when students were, for instance, fasting, coming from Sanjak, that special meals were organized on marches, and also they were together. Those who were religious were together, prayed together, which was never seen before in Serbia. And we also have many things we need to discuss, and also including war veterans and their confessions, public confessions, how wrong they were regarding their attitude towards this population and other population, ethnic minorities, or ethnic groups. But I move to Jana again, Trajković, and I would like to ask you, Jana. No, to Katarina maybe. First, Katarina, I think it's first to say this about maybe to single out the most significant symbols of the protests in your view, and also to comment shortly on what is forbidden on the protests, which flags are allowed, which flags are forbidden, why. And just maybe your short reflection, how you see it.
Okay, I'll try to be very short on this very complicated question that I got. So basically, the symbols I think that most effectively represent on what's going on now are actually the national symbols of Serbia. So for the first time, this is something that Bojana already touched upon with Novi Pazar being finally reintegrated into Serbian society. And this is a very significant thing, because what we are seeing now is students cutting throats with these with the 90s. So the regime that continued to rule until today through violence and repression. So they were closely the Serbian national flag, the national anthem, and everything was very closely connected to what we have seen through the 90s and what we've seen as a very violent regime. And Aleksandar Vučić, the president, being part of all of that, playing a huge part in that. So I think that what the students are trying to do is taking back all of these symbols. So the national flag, the national anthem, the significant dates, and the constitution, and sort of bringing it back to the people in a sort of way. So they have been accused of being quite nationalistic, which we can start a debate on. But I need to point out the fact that they're a heterogeneous group, so they're not unique. They come from both the left, the right, they're mixed, their ideologies are completely different, but they're united under this one thing, or a couple of things, I don't know how to put it, but that is bringing back democracy or implementing democracy in the Serbian society, and the rule of law, which implies actually the call for the constitution, etc. So in that sense, we can, on the protests, we can merely see Serbian flags, a bunch of them, and the flags from different faculties, different universities. In Novi Pazar, as you could have seen in the photos that I've posted, you could have also seen the regional flag as well, which is one of the first times we could have seen the regional flag and the flag of Serbia flying, being on the protests together. Which symbolizes this solidarity and this reuniting of, or finally uniting of the Serbian society in a way. So there are no EU flags. And the reason for that is actually this targeting that we talked about yesterday and that I mentioned today, is the students being very, very careful about who they're associated with because of these attacks of the regime. So because of them being labeled as foreign agents and this revolution being labeled as a colored one. So this is why there are no EU flags present on the protests. And also, again, they're not homogeneous. So not all of them are quite pro-EU, which is natural. Some of them are, but on the other hand, the majority of them now are a bit disappointed with EU politics and not reacting, and them kind of supporting this stabilitocracy model for years, a model which kind of privileges surface stability over democratic integrity and human rights in Serbia. This is how they see it. So, and this is something that we can debate. But also there's quite a lot of research that is being done, and that the citizens in Serbia today are not relying on anyone in the for political sense. So not in the EU, not in Russia, not in China, not in the United States. So they're quite as Luka is not here, but he labeled it at a certain point as self-dependency. And this is something that we've done in this Horizon project that we're part of. And I think that these facts show a lot about how what symbols are important to them, what they're trying to bring back, and what they're trying to. But on the other hand, and I'll finish with this, they don't allow EU flags in the protests, but they do promote European values. So they promote democracy, they promote rule of law, and then we can debate on whether these movements are European or not.
Thank you, but also to mention that there are no Russian flags, there are no Ukrainian flags, there are no Israeli flags, there are no Palestinian flags, but students organized one protest in support of Palestine. But also there are no LGBTQ flags, which also the explanation was when they were accused, why not this flag? They said no flags which can divide us and defocus us, because we are focused on this corrupted system. But we can debate in our debate afterwards. And now I go to Jana briefly, just to ask you what is going on now in secondary schools. You ended the school, you went back to schools. Students still haven't gone back to university. Some of them started like this online teaching. But what is going on with secondary schools, with gymnasiums?
Well, at some point, we were really forced to step back from the blockades because the pressure became unbearable, both from within our schools and teachers and principals, and both from home, because our teachers really couldn't keep going on without getting paid, and our parents were really terrified. Like, will our children be able to graduate? Will they get into university at all? But that didn't really rely on us, because that was the job of the Ministry of Education, and they didn't do their job at the time. But the end of the blockade was never the end of our fight, because even stepping out of it, we are still fully engaged, and many of us will continue now the same fight, but now as students when we enroll in the faculty. And right now, during the time of the civil disobedience, we are really active in that, and we are protesting that way. That is like when you have multiple places in the city blockade, and you're putting like the things to block the streets, and we're really like engaged in that. And we built like high school info centers and network to keep the students in Belgrade informed where the blockades, and we also created like a sort of working units to try to find the legal support. Often the people who have like connections to the lawyers, because they're literally arresting the minors in the street right now and the high schoolers, and we really need to have a great network to keep the track who is arrested and where, to organize the protest of support to them and to find them lawyers. And that is the fun thing, because we organize ourselves in a way that no one would ever expect from like just high schoolers. And for those of us who graduated this year, we are in the really difficult positions, because for months we waited for the Ministry of Education to address our entrance exam and to tell them a date and to clarify the university budget placements. And all we got was like the wage statements and rumors for a long time. And we were told that we were feared that even the entrance exams won't even happen and that we can get into the university. And at one point we believed that that would be like the September. And just 2 weeks ago, we out of nowhere we find out that the exams will be held in July in like 20 days. And now we are all under really big pressure, and because we have a really little time to prepare, but these are the consequences we were ready to face when we entered the blockade. And we knew from the beginning that the change will never come without the sacrifice. That is the situation.
Thank you so much. And to close this panel, before we open the floor for your questions, I would just ask Vjeran to comment on this European aspect of the protests, because we saw that students organized some actions addressing European institutions, like riding bicycles to Strasbourg to attend the Council of Europe through many countries, and then also having this relay marathon of 2,000 kilometers, which also then when they also passed through Croatia then to Brussels, and then but still they do not allow European flags. But we heard that they want to that they appreciate, or they are fond of European values. And how would you comment these actions directed towards European institutions? They were students commented that they were silent, that they were very angry when, for instance, European officials were meeting in the middle of demonstrations with the president, as if nothing happened. Then students really and citizens objected that and criticized European officials. And so European officials found in an awkward situation. But the question arises, did these demonstrations reveal something which we didn't know about European institutions or not? And were they students naive or not? And can we say that they that it is for you, for instance, normal that you protect European values but do not allow European flags? How do you see all these questions?
Okay, well, it's a complicated question, but I think we heard some of the answers already. And I think that these authoritarian regimes are very good at associating themselves with the state. I think we can see that in Russia, as Putin also portrays threats to his regime as threats to Russia. And I think that Vučić is doing the same. You know, the state is under threat. There's no actual legitimate threat happening to the state borders. And I mean, certainly that's not coming from the EU or from Croatia, but that's how it's constantly portrayed. And it's like quite shocking when you read, or at least when I'm reading, a media in Croatian and reading the Serbian various portals. So it's obviously that this is a propaganda strategy. And I think it makes sense that the student protests don't insert any kind of images that might undermine them, especially that the state could use. And I also think that we shouldn't forget, there were also protests to this lithium mining that was going on, which is already happening before, I believe, these other protests. So there was already suspicion and maybe not really completely believing what the EU is going to say, if they're going to, put money and finances and these big projects ahead of actual democracy and what the people want, especially the youth. And I think it's up to them to make these decisions. So here's from an article saying why there's no flags, but again, I think we've heard the answer from people in the field. I was also asked, why haven't, what's wrong with Croatia? We're never protesting. Now, the cynical answer I would say is that, well, yeah, we've got the coast. So anytime there's some mobilization happening, and this is the case of the 2009, I believe, 2011 Facebook protests that were going on. It was mobilizing, and then as soon as like May, everyone was on the coast airing out their vikendicas. So, that is one cynical view, or the fact that I noticed a lot of my colleagues on like a Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon, 2 p.m. complaining how terrible it is. I'm like, well, it's a working day and we're sitting in a cafe, spending a lot of time just chatting. So on one hand, we can say that maybe life in Croatia isn't actually that bad. You have to be pretty hungry to get people in the streets. But the other answer, I would say, actually, there are quite a few protests in Croatia. And I was, when I first got hired at the University of Rijeka, we were part of these Studentska blokada, which we also had plenums, and these are from Zagreb, but there were many also in Rijeka, and we organized alternative classes with my students. I mean, I had just been hired, but I was organizing some kind of ultimate frisbee activities on the lawn. There's even a film by a friend of mine, Igor Bezinovic, and you can see that. I think it's available free online. And I don't know if this is being watched or influenced in Belgrade or not, but Croatia had gone through these things, so it's not that Croatia is completely passive. And there's quite a few protests. I just think that maybe the situation in Serbia demands even more mobilization and people being on the street for more serious things. And again, however much people in Croatia are maybe anti-EU or Eurosceptic or EU skeptic, I think it has created mechanisms to resolve grievances. And there is a culture of dialogue and democracy, no matter, however, away Balkan, and it's like terrible, but in a way, I think being in the EU has ultimately benefited Croatian society. I know maybe there's some Eurosceptics here who will challenge me on that, or maybe I'm just an American capitalist. But I think it has been positive, especially at the university. And then just to kind of wrap up, now this has also come up, this nationalism, and is it something that just the media creates? And I'm putting here side by side, because in Zagreb, unfortunately, we had this massive concert of 500,000 people of Thompson, and we've got youth showing these Ustaša symbols and Ustaša messages. So the question could be, what do we have in the former Yugoslavia 30 years later, with these nationalist political parties dominating the educational system, dominating the media? And maybe that's to be unfortunately expected, that these generations are now normalizing these things. I hope it doesn't mean new violence and new war, and I hope we can have, solidarity. And I think most people do feel that way, but at least visually and symbolically, it's kind of troubling for us scholars that are involved in peace and reconciliation, have been working on these issues. So I'm just going to leave it up there, and maybe food for thought or discussion later.
Thank you so much. And now we open the floor for your questions.
Okay. So thank you very much. This was really great. And I just have a quick question. I don't know if you want to collect questions or. Okay. My question is, because you said that European Union, that students represent the values of European Union, but there are no flags. So I wanted to ask, does European Union respect the values of European Union, and that they need to deserve those flags there? So I don't know if they're with rise of right wing in whole Europe now. I don't know if. I want to just to state that maybe European Union doesn't represent the same values now. So
I hope you are not going to be framed for the contacts with Ukrainian intelligence after my questioning. So I have a question to Professor Pavlaković. in Croatia, there is a Serbian community which is quite politically active, I would say. And I'm curious, in this situation of being slammed in between the state, which is increasingly repressive and brutal, and the minority politics in the home country, are they trying to express any sort of the opinion or not really, and whether there are some sort of the solidarities or maybe some sort of the enticement with this Serbian Progressive Party, so-called? And I have another question. So all of those protests started from Vojvodina, right? From Novi Sad, in one way or another. And I'm curious to hear. I mean, it started with this catastrophe. I'm curious to know whether it's happening somewhere something in there still, whether there are some sort of the horizontal contacts in between the universities and those working groups, not only within one university, right? And the third question, I know I have way too much questions, and I have even questions to Marija, which I'm going to ask later. And the third question is, one of the presenters pointed out that the rector of the University of Belgrade is a person number one, which was honestly surprising to me, because in the Ukrainian case, vast majority of the administrative staff in the protests would be siding with the authorities, with the state, with a couple of small irrelevant exceptions, really. So I'm curious, how is it functioning in your case with the rectors, pro-rectors, and so on, and whether it's unique, and whether it's happening at all levels? And also the question, no. Private universities, are they also participating?
Hello, thank you for this amazing talks. So my name is Marija, and I am a participant of Independent Student Union Direct Action in Ukraine. So we organize in a very similar way to what you have presented here. And so my question is to Katarina, and well, actually to Jana and Bojana as well, about the organization insiders information. So you said that you have this faceless, well-known representative structure, right? But at the same time here, you are presenting, well, yourself, but also talking about this protest. So my question is, how exactly did you end up on this panel? And would you say that, have you been presenting this protest before? And if yes, then have you been selected to talk about it, or have you volunteered or not? Because, well, from my experience, we, despite being a non-representative student union, there are still people who volunteer more than others. So it creates this some sort of some people are overrepresented, I would say, despite it being a non-representative structure. So yeah, there's this question, and the next one is, well, in your case, you definitely organized a much bigger thing than whatever we have organized in Ukraine ever. But what I have noticed is that in some universities, it is much easier to establish this ways of organizing, because in some places, students are more open to leaderless ways of organizing, and in some other ones, they are more skeptic to it. So my question is, have there been places where this way of organizing was not accepted and where you organize differently? And if yes, what do you do about it? Do you just kick them out, or do you how do you cope with that? How do you cope with those other views on how you should organize? Thank you.
We have three more, or connect everything, or respond now.
Not everything, but one more question, and then
okay, so you go. Okay.
No.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. It was really interesting to hear. And my question is, how does wider Serbian society perceive protests? So what are the attitudes? Would you say that the majority of the population are have solidarity with the students? And do you think there is any chance that more groups will try to join the demonstrations to support the students? Thank you.
Okay, yes, first one about, I will come mostly to your questions. There are still horizontal contacts. Yes, everything started in Vojvodina because the canopy collapse happened in Vojvodina. But what I was trying to emphasize is how fast and how effectively the students connected with each other and gave each other support. So both students and academia is connected, both also professors and administrative staff. Yes, I mentioned the rector. The rector is at some point became the enemy number one in the state media. He is even on a trial. So the students 2.0, or the student who wants to learn, which we didn't have time to tackle, but that's completely another story. These are false students organized by the government. I would say they sued the rector because he's not allowing them to get their education. So he had several trials and he was at the police and everything. But it's not about him. The whole, I mean, at some point, the support from the universities and academia was really unanimous. So everybody was supporting it, and they were even issuing official statements, giving their own demands and stuff like this. Right now, the situation is quite different. Jana talked a lot about the pressures that everybody is facing. Right now, even the faculty of dramatic arts, which started everything, is now doing the hybrid online teaching model because they cannot endure anymore. The government gave these plans for another academic year and for budget students to all the faculties except for a few, among which was the faculty of dramatic arts. So they had to surrender, so to say. For the private universities, yes, there are some private universities that were blockading, that strongly supported, and that are now protesting the lectures. So their professors and the academic staff, they are ignoring the protest, but the students are just protesting, not going to the lectures and everything. But this is not the majority, to be honest, because it's quite different. These private faculties could just be shut down because they have individual contracts with each student. So the faculty is obliged by law to give education back to the students. So it's a completely different situation, but they do support, and they have been supporting the blockade since the beginning.
Okay, I will try to answer the question. So the faceless representation, as I tried to point out at the beginning, I'm also a researcher and I'm employed at the faculty. So I'm not here on behalf of the plenum of the Faculty of Philosophy. I don't have the mandate in that sense to speak with you. My students know that I'm here, of course, and my colleagues, but I'm not in that sense participating. So we're more helping them out than actually actively taking part in that sense in the protest. So this is why I'm here with my name and surname in front of you and not as an anonymous person. But what we do is we respect all of their decisions. So we always ask them if we can go to, if we're very much involved with them. So we have a briefing with them on what we wish to say, etc. So very much collaborating in everything that's going on. I don't know what was the other question. Yeah, regarding the people who expose themselves too much. So there were some cases of that, but they were kind of put aside. So these people were not allowed anymore to participate in the media, but each faculty and each university has taken this rule under its wing. So everyone voluntarily decided to go in this manner. And regarding Maxim's question about the horizontal connections of the universities, this is important because of the political participation of the student right now and the student list that's going on. They're collaborating on this and on the political articulation of everything and with the elections, etc. How does the broader Serbian society react to this? We see 500,000 people on the streets in Belgrade, for example, on March 15, and I think that speaks a lot about what's going on. Bojana talked about different branches also collaborating with the students, but there's also research and data showing that right now the students and this movement have larger support than the regime and then Aleksandar Vučić, which I think is one of the most important aspects. So I think I answered most of it.
Okay, yeah, that was a very good question and an interesting one, of course. So the main Serbian, Croatian Serb party, the SDSS, had long been in the government, but now because there's a far-right party in the Croatian government in coalition with the HDZ, they're quite marginalized. And as you can see, this Thompson concert with this Ustaša symbols. There's also a new law in the cemetery, so removing Serbian graves that threaten the dignity of the homeland war. I think that's how it's phrased. But so they're dealing with a lot of issues there, and I think they're also quite a bit financed by the Serbian state. So they're in a very awkward position of, they don't want to saw off all the branches that they're sitting on. So they've actually been, at least from my understanding, officially from the party, they've been quite silent on it, although Novosti, the weekly newspaper that's not just for Croatian Serbs, but also for left-wing intellectual Croatian society, they have been quite, supportive, of course, of the protest. But yeah, great question, and the short answer is like silences because of their position.
Just regarding this organization, what I have learned from my daughter, who is a student, is that they need mandate for every action from the plenum, and the faceless aspect is achieved because they're changing a lot. They're present in media very much, but actually we are constantly seeing different faces. So we have talk shows where students appear with their name and family name, but next time it is the other student, and next time the other student. So every time plenum votes for who is going for, I suppose that the invitation comes from media, and then plenum votes who is going to represent them for that particular call. And so we have seen so many student faces in these 8 months that I cannot remember any single student who is so yeah. So and this is something new. And also when I talk to my daughter, they have their plans, and I sometimes ask her, "Can you uncover me? What are you planning?" And she said no. I said, "Why?" "I don't want to be voted as an incompetent person by planning. I don't want." That is kind of exclusion then from the whole student. So I don't get, I cannot sometimes or very often see what are they planning.
Before we go to other questions, we have three. I was told by other, minimum three, I was told that we really shouldn't prolong this that much. So is it okay that we have three and then we continue informally after? We have a break and then we need to start on time with the next session that we have with the Ukrainian school. So three questions, and I see more hands. I'm really sorry, but max by 6:15 that we finish, okay? So it was Katya and Oksana and Sven. Oh, sorry, and Natalia. Oh, that's four. Let's do then these four, and that's it. Sorry.
Okay, we'll be brief. Thank you very much. I wanted to ask you about the way you opt for the means to make pressure, like to make the protest. I ask because I see that there are some criteria, like for the means you opt for and not opt for, right? So you're not aligning with this or that. You are not kind of having an agenda, right? You are not opting probably for some violent. So like I wanted to ask about this. How do you reflect on the means? Like what means are categorically excluded and so on and so forth? Or like just how do you come up with an idea to make a trip to Brussels, right? So it's an unusual, like this part. And the second part would be, do you still reflect as the protest is going for quite a while, that some means are not effective or not that effective? So like what was that reflection on the means that you already like exploited, and maybe you see that there is a need, like constant need for new means, for new ways of articulating the demands. So like the question on the means. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think I can come up with like a million questions about that, but I will try to limit myself as best as I can. So one thing that I do not quite understand, but I really want to understand, is how the universities work right now. So you mentioned that there is an admission process of a sort for people who finish secondary school and they can enter universities. But I just wonder how it works, how the admission works, if universities are striking. And another question about how universities work is what do current students do? Do you have some sort of unofficial lectures, unofficial schools, etc.? And my second question or series of questions is about how students of the universities communicate with students in schools, because for me it's absolutely significant, and I just wonder how did Serbian students manage to reach school students, whether it was by horizontal connections, like talking to younger brother and sisters, or maybe teachers had some hand in it. And also, yes, it is an interesting question for me. What was the role of, well, secondary school teachers in somehow communicating with their students what is going on in the country?
Okay, I'll also try to be brief. So in relation to Oksana's question, the question is about how to cooperate with the people who are not attached to education, so to say, like the workers. Do they also follow your own demands, or do they just disregard them and protest on their own? Because I understand that this is the student-driven and completely like student-led protest, but there are also people who are like involved for their own needs and for their own demands. So do they also like cooperate with you, or do they just have their own agenda? And is there any solidarity besides Croatia, like Zagreb? Are there any protests in Skopje or Sarajevo? Because I think they also face like similar struggles of democracy, authoritarian threat, corruption, economic instability. This, and also who gets students out of prisons once they're sentenced? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, hi. I was provoked by Vjeran to just come up with a common question. I ended up in Informer for doing research on veterans taking parts in your protest, actually. So my question goes to three of you. What's the relationship between the protesters, meaning students, youth, and the veterans? Because the veterans have a very different position in Serbia than they have in Croatia, even in Kosovo, even in Bosnia and Herzegovina to a degree. they have this kind of maybe a little bit of let's say problematic position, at least among some of the probably protesters, among some maybe not. So what's the relationship there? Because I was only getting answers through them, which is maybe, of course, slightly filtered. They also kind of play into their own kind of experiences. They see this as their new war, basically, but for children, for democracy, for rule of law, for all of that. So that's the question. Thanks.
Okay, I will try to answer the means and the university question. Regarding the means, students have this working group for strategy and the highest working group for strategy. So each faculty is sending their delegates to this common group for strategies, and also a working group for security, and that's where they come up with different strategies on what might work, what might not work. What I would stress here is that they're learning from their own mistakes, maybe, and they're developing their movement. So we entered the 8th month of everything that has been going on. So this movement has changed a lot since the very beginning. So after March 15th, after they saw that the people were quite disappointed and nothing happened, we still don't know what should have happened, but nothing happened. They started to go into political articulation because they saw that they need the 4 demands or 6 demands, because 2 were added, are not going to be fulfilled anytime soon. So they came into this political articulation. So this is how they changed their means. I don't know if I answered your question completely, but it's not per se a demand, the elections, but now it's the number one thing. But maybe to somewhat answer Natalia's questions in this sense, one of the demands, so the 6th one, now is regarding the case in Macedonia when the club was set on fire or caught fire, and a lot of people died in it, and some of the people who were injured were transferred to Belgrade. And this was on the 16th of March when Vučić entered the emergency room when no one else can enter, and he entered with a bunch of media. So students demanded responsibility and resignations for this. So this is one way of solidarity, but I'll leave the question to my colleagues to answer. And about the university, this is a very tough question. We can talk about it afterwards in more details, but very shortly, the last faculty, the Faculty of Philosophy, voted online lectures today. There were no informal lectures during the complete blockades. Most of the professors and most of the faculties stood in complete solidarity with the students and have supported them to the fullest. So they didn't hold any lectures, and that's why they, at the end, the government kind of completely took away their salaries until they started working. So there was this enormous pressure for everyone to start working, and now for 2 weeks, there was this enormous pressure on the Faculty of Philosophy to start working. So the university did not work. Some faculties let the administration in if the professors and the dean were in full solidarity with them, and others were in complete blockade, so not even the administration could enter the building. I'm sorry that I answered this quite quickly, but we don't have much time.
I have 3 very short answers. So first one, for the question, are the protests not effective? My personal opinion is that a violent revolution would be much more effective, but the students chose peaceful demonstrations, and that's what we are doing right now. We are listening to them. Second, how to cooperate with the groups outside of the educational systems. each faculty is communicating with the professionals from their own field. So I don't know, engineers are communicating with the IT community and etc. But the workers and the other groups that are not connected with the education, they are also organizing different kind of communications, and they are trying to get them involved, and most of them are involved. But the problem is that our unions are devastated or don't exist at all, so they don't have anybody organized to communicate with. That's the problem. Who is taking the students from the prisons? It's National Bar Association. They devoted all their capacities to the students right now. The answers.
So someone asked how the students and high scholars communicate. We have like informal communication. We literally at the beginning of the blockades went to the university that is like a building next to us and asked them for help, and they helped us and they were really nice to us, and we are cooperating like for the 6 months now. But the more formal communication, students councillor of delegates and our councillor of delegates voted that we have to have like special channel of communication between high schoolers and the students, where the big decisions are being made between the both groups.
Yeah, and just shortly about war veterans. So basically, their main role in the protest is for them to be on the streets and along with the motorcyclists, bikers, to secure the protests, and they're in full communication with the students. And when they actually do something that the students do not approve of, they're asked to leave the protest and the assembly. And when they're holding a speech, for example, the one that Marija mentioned in front of Radio Television Serbia, which was quite shocking for all of us, I must say, it's narrative in a positive way, the students have to approve of that speech. So, yeah. I think they did. So that's how it usually works. I'm not sure about this one concretely, but this is how it goes. When we organized with the teachers a protest, the teachers had to send at least not the entire speech, but at least some bullet points. So, yeah.
And I will just close this session. I just will add that students invited citizens to organize into zborove, like assemblies, citizen assemblies, which is happening now. So stay tuned. This is still going on. Who knows what will happen? We hope for the best. And thank you for discussing with us all these issues and problems and these protests. Thank you.